Good morning. I'm Eddie Muller, and I'm glad you're up bright and early this Sunday because we're going fishing. Not a typical activity in Noir Alley, but then today's film, 1950's The Breaking Point, isn't your typical movie. In fact, its backstory all began on a fishing trip back in 1939. That's when director Howard Hawks boasted to his pal, Ernest Hemingway, that he could make a decent movie from the novelist's worst book. And which one would that be? Asked America's most famous writer, to which Hawks replied, that piece of junk, To Have and Have Not. Well, 5 years and a boatload of screenwriters later, Hawks made good on his boast. To Have and Have Not, made at Warner's in 1944, provided another memorable role for Humphrey Bogart, although its greatest claim to fame was introducing to movie history 19-year-old Lauren Bacall. Of course, Hemingway could be forgiven if he didn't recognize his novel, because aside from the title and the name of the boat jockey Bogart played, the movie had nothing to do with the book. Hawks's film is such a knockoff of the Oscar-winning Casablanca, it should have been called Martinique. Now, this is precisely what Ranald McDougall, screenwriting protege of producer Jerry Wald, told his bosses at Warner Brothers 5 years later. We own Hemingway's book, but we still haven't made a movie out of it. He suggested the studio take another crack at it, this time more faithfully. The screenwriter had some juice at Warner's, having written 2 recent hits for Joan Crawford, Mildred Pierce and Possessed, as well as the popular June Bride, starring Bette Davis. Although such names as Kirk Douglas, James Cagney, and Errol Flynn were bandied about for the leading role, McDougall wanted John Garfield, who he felt was perfect for the tempted and tortured skipper. And the actor agreed, provided Michael Curtiz was at the helm. Garfield had made 3 of his earliest films with Curtiz, and he credited the Hungarian director with making him a star. It's likely that in 1949, his popularity waning a bit, Garfield hoped a reunion with Curtiz would bring him luck. His previous film, Under My Skin, also based on a Hemingway story, had tanked at the box office. Now, largely due to Jerry Wald's enthusiasm and track record, the studio gave the go-ahead for another version of To Have and Have Not, renamed The Breaking Point. Garfield had so much excitement for the project and so many ideas, he became, in essence, a de facto producer, one determined to avoid the schmaltziness of Hawks's film. He loved McDougall's script because it captured the honesty and truthfulness of the book without resorting to any phony glamour. Captain Harry Morgan was now a decorated World War II vet who doesn't fit comfortably into peacetime. Balboa, California, replaced the novel's Key West setting, making the story less exotic, but more the tale of an everyday guy. The narrative tightened the focus on Morgan's troubled marriage and the one-time hero's struggle to support his family. Garfield especially wanted to present a realistic depiction of a husband and wife at odds, yet still devoted to each other. Marriage and family clearly were on the actor's mind. While making Under My Skin, Garfield had had an affair with co-star Micheline Presley, only the latest in a string of dalliances that increased after the accidental death in 1945 of his 6-year-old daughter, Catherine. Garfield struggled to be a loyal husband to Robbie and a good father to his other kids, David and Julie. All that inner turmoil would be brought to bear in this performance, which the actor believed was the best of his career.
Hello, Harry.
Hello, dear.
The scenes between Harry and his wife, Lucy, wonderfully played by Phyllis Thaxter, are stronger than anything in the novel. Their familiarity with each other, in moments that are both tender and vicious, seems like real marriage.
I was only trying to help.
Then stop nagging me. That's the way to help me. Stop nagging.
I'm not nagging. I'm just trying to talk sense to you and you won't listen.
If you'd only realize what I've been going through the last 3 weeks.
Don't give me that Purple Heart routine. You've got a wife and 2 kids to think about. Keeping us together, getting us enough to eat, clothes for our backs. That's the biggest war there is, and you better realize it.
Now, Thaxter imbues Lucy with a grit and determination rare in Hollywood wasp wives, and the character's vulnerability is heart-wrenching. The other woman, Leona Charles, was entirely McDougall's creation. He distilled Hemingway's sketchy musings about sex-hungry predators into one fierce example of the species. Given full body and snippy wit by Patricia Neal, Leona might be the most believable femme fatale in film noir.
You kind of wear a guy down.
Are you getting worn down? Are you?
I'm getting used to it.
Featuring a supporting cast that's simply perfect, top to bottom, with especially memorable turns from Wallace Ford and Juano Hernandez, here's an Ernest Hemingway adaptation that actually does Papa one better: The Breaking Point.